Judge, welcome back to the program here. What do you expect the border to look like under a second President Trump administration?
Well, our hopes and expectations are that it'll look similar to what we see today, but in a much more positive and continuation of the economic boom that we've been experiencing over the last several years.
President-elect Trump has promised that mass deportation. How's that going to impact Cameron County and Brownsville in the area?
Well, hopefully, there are certain comments or promises made that really aren't made to necessarily be kept. And I think looking at that statement on the mass deportation, if it deals with the fact of trying to deport criminals and illegals or undocumented that are criminals, I don't think anybody has any concern whatsoever. I'm reminded often that under the Obama administration, they deported more individuals than any other current or recent administration. So that in and of itself, I think is A-okay. The idea, though, of just rounding up individuals who may not have the documentation but are currently part of the fabric of our region, of our state, of our country. They're working, they're being educated, they're raising their families, they're being productive members of our society and our country. I think that doesn't sit well with a lot of individuals, a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of people who watch and keep track of our economy. The idea that a mass deportation would be a benefit to our country, I think, is a fallacy. And I don't think there's a lot of economists that would support that such an action or an endeavor would, at the end of the day, do nothing except for cause harm to, obviously, to the individuals, to the communities, and especially to our economy at large. If the idea is to work on slowing down inflation, getting those prices under control of those staples that made this election so important, and they wanted this eggs, milk, the food, etc., then those are the things that our working migrants, documented and undocumented, are the ones putting in the sweat and toil so that you and I are not having to pay $15 for a head of lettuce. So I'll hope that the incoming administration will be mindful of that to that extent, because I think it could definitely cause much more harm than intended.
You and I have even heard of some Republicans saying they wanted to close the border altogether. Number one, is that even possible? Sure, it's possible to restrict, traffic and trade across there. But secondly, what kind of an impact would something like that actually have?
Governor Abbott, and I agree with him. Texas has been moving up the ladder since he took office would be one of the most largest economies in the entire world. I think we were at 8th or 7th, and we're looking for 6th or 5th, right? Well, that cross-border trade is the bread and butter of the growth that Texas has been experiencing over the last 10, 20, 30 years, starting with NAFTA and continuing under the USMCA. What also gets lost, I think, in the discussion, if you will, is the fact that if we've got strong cross-border trade, then what do we have? We've got strong border security. And those jobs that are employing people on both sides of the border, both here and in Canada, the jobs that they're creating here in the state and throughout our country, those are the ones that are jet fueling our economy and the growth that we're experiencing. So I think talk like that is not positive. It's negative, and it really doesn't. It won't accomplish the goal of whatever it is that they want to accomplish. The stronger our cross-border trade with Mexico, especially, and our Latin American countries, then the stronger our border security will be.
Judge, are you aware of any land there in Cameron County that's being set aside for these mass deportations? I know up the river there in Starr County, there's already some that the land commissioner, Dawn Buckingham, has offered to the Trump administration. How about Cameron County?
I've not heard about any here in Cameron County, and I also haven't heard any other than in Starr County, which you just mentioned, Jason.
Let me ask you about the tariffs, because these are proposed tariffs, and this situation might solve itself. Maybe that's what the president-elect wants to do by saying he wants to impose these big tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. If this happens, what does that do to the economy in Cameron County and South Texas and the state as a whole?
we know that at the end of the day, if those tariffs come into play, especially as a punitive measure, at the end of the day, the people that are going to pay are you and I, and if the end consumer here in our country, here in our county, here in our state. Uh, all economists will tell you that the tariff wars, for the most part, don't usually end up having long-term winners. There may be some short-term gains. Now, if this ends up bringing the parties to the negotiating table, and the president-elect is able to get more favorable standing or agreements, and I'll remind everyone, the USMCA was his project. He should take credit for it. He did it. So it's interesting that even before he's back in office, he's already wanting to renegotiate. Now, like I said, if at the end of the day that ends up helping, then so that's good. But I don't believe, and I think you'll be hard pressed to find a lot of economists, Wall Street bankers, business owners that are going to tell you that at the end of the day, tariffs are going to impact the countries that they're trying to impact. They're going to impact you and I as the end consumer, and it's just going to cost us more to buy that product.
Judge, what are the cross-border collaborations like with your counterparts in Matamoros and the other areas around there?
Well, we just had elections in Mexico. So there's a new mayor in Matamoros. There's a new governor in Tamaulipas, and obviously there's a new president in Mexico. So we're in the process of getting to meet and know who the new administrators and bureaucrats are going to be at both the local, the state, and the federal level. Cameron County and myself have got a long history of working across the border with our cross-border neighbors to make sure that we work in collaboration, especially on the economic side. Obviously now on the security side, and we're hopeful with everything that we're hearing and with what we're working on and what they're working on, that the growth, the economic projects that we're working on are going to benefit both sides of the river. They come over and shop, we go over there and shop. They come over and stay and spend their money, we go over there and spend their money. So it's a very symbiotic, positive relationship. It's been like that for generations. And I think as the borders become kind of a flashpoint for a lot of other issues, the positive nature of that history and the benefit to both sides kind of gets lost in the conversation. And I'm here to make sure that it remains front and center, because it's a benefit not just to us here locally, but to the entire state and hopefully our country.
Judge, Texas leaders say they're going to likely pare back spending by DPS along the border here. I know state troopers have filled restaurants and hotels for years all along South Texas, along the Rio Grande there. If this happens, if the state pulls state troopers back, what kind of an impact do you think that's going to have on local economies in the valley?
Well, the hope is that the continued growth, will more than be able to replace our troopers. But as far as them spending their money locally in the restaurants, et cetera, and staying at the hotels, but we want to support our DPS troopers. We know that they've been given they have a tough job in and of itself, being DPS troopers, but adding the security element to it, I think, was make their job that much more difficult. Hopefully, those resources will be able to be focused on enforcing Texas laws and enforcing traffic laws throughout our state. That the Rangers have the resources they need in order to do the investigations. But I'm a big supporter of law enforcement, have been, always will be, and I want to make sure that they have the resources. I'm hopeful that that if there's a better relationship between our state and the incoming administration, that hopefully bodes well for our border communities.
But are restaurants, are hotels concerned at all, to your knowledge, that if these troopers get pulled out, that's going to, dent the local economy or make it take a hit?
No, I don't. Obviously, more is better, right? But we don't think it's going to be to the extent of an impact that they're necessarily going to pull out. They're just going to be doing additional their other duties per se. So the growth is coming. We continue to have a lot of local businesses and new businesses coming to the region. We're pretty optimistic that that's going to continue.
A couple more quick questions here, Judge. Republicans did very well in South Texas in November, and I know that one of the big headlines has been Cameron County flipping from blue to red for the first time in I think 20 years or so. Why do you think your constituents backed Donald Trump over Kamala Harris?
Well, clearly that I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't as surprised as other people. But by the same,
Were you surprised by it?
I was surprised by the extent of the difference and the size of his victory over the vice president. We knew it was going to be close, but the his victory and the extent that victory was a little bit surprising. But to one extent, the reality is we knew that there were going to be problems in this upcoming election, and if you'll allow me, when I moved back home after law school at the University of Texas, by the way, go Horns this Saturday and every other week after that. I used to tell people, my friends, and I've always considered myself a middle of the road individual. Listen to both sides, listen to different diverging views, because you'll get a better view and understanding.
Sure.
Back then, the Democrats would take us for granted as far as the border communities, and the Republicans would ignore us because we were so blue. Well, move that up a few years, right? When Governor Bush ran for president, he carried Cameron County. Cameron County has voted for Republican county judges in the past. So it's not a complete surprise that Cameron County, who I tend to believe is definitely a more conservative area where religion, family, and faith, those are priorities for us that have been and always will be. So I'm not too surprised by that. The extent of the victory, considering some of the rhetoric that the president-elect has used in the past, especially against Mexicans or Latinos or Hispanics, that is interesting. But people voted with their pocketbook this election, and it wasn't just here. If it had only been here, Cameron or Hidalgo here in the Valley, then I'd be even more surprised. But it happened along the entire border except for El Paso, and it happened across the entire country. So clearly, people across this country voted with their pocketbook. The current administration did not address the economy, did not address some of the accomplishments that they had, and they didn't change the narrative. So now the incoming administration, President-elect Trump, he made promises, and we want him to keep them because we want this country to continue to succeed. Democrat or Republican, we want this country to succeed. So I'm going to wish President Trump well. And he was here a few weeks ago for the launch. I didn't get a chance to see him then, but I'm hopeful to see him and meet him down the road.
Do you think Democrats will be able to retake South Texas anytime soon?
Oh, I think there's pendulum swings right and left. You've got to have a good candidate. You've got to have a strong campaign, and I think the Democrats, we didn't have that this past election.
As you look to the new year, Judge, as you look to the new year, Judge, the biggest challenges facing Cameron County are what? And what are the biggest opportunities, do you think?
I think they're one and the same. The opportunities are the same as some of the concerns. We're hopeful, obviously, the space station will continue to expand, and with a mind towards protecting and addressing the environmental concerns that are being raised. The new one is the issue with regards to the sonic booms. We had the launch, I think, 5 weeks apart. FAA's recently approved the request, it appears, to go up to 25 launches per year. So that's basically 2 a month. I think if we get more and more accustomed to the launches, obviously, I think it will be a much more common and less intrusive situation. We're hopeful that they're doing their work, and that the research that they've indicated, that their engineers are saying, is that this sonic boom is nothing more than a sound wave, and will not create either short or long-term damage to any of the property or the structures. Same thing with regards to the use of the water and obtaining the proper permits and the disposing of that water. We want to make sure that our Laguna Madre stands protected. And SpaceX should be their concern, number one, also, so that they're here and we're here to benefit from them from a mutual relationship for the long term. The LNGs, I'm a big fan and supporter of them. We know that there's been a few hiccups on the legal side, and that's working its way through the court. But they continue to pursue the construction and the development of the trains. It's a long-term project, 6 more years, and then Texas LNG is getting ready to make their FIB. So I think those two opportunities, which also do raise some environmental concerns,
Sure.
probably part and parcel of the same solution and also concern.
It sounds like Elon Musk and SpaceX have really made a significant impact there in Cameron County.
Yeah, several $billion investment will do that. Having the attention of the whole world with regards to the next mode of space travel. Plus, he wants to make Starship the next mode of travel. Now, you and I, we've been around back in the 1915, 16, when the Wright brothers were establishing flight. We may have looked at them and said, "You ain't getting me on one of those." I may feel that way right now about the Starship, but in a few more years, being able to get on that ship and from Brownsville or Dallas and being in Hong Kong or Europe in a matter of minutes, 30 minutes to an hour, that could well be the next mode of travel. And having those manufactured, tested here, obviously, I think can bode well for us. So we want them to be successful, and then obviously the relationship that Elon has established with the president-elect, I hope that continues in a very positive manner.
Have you met Elon Musk yet?
Oh yes, we've met several times. We do communicate every once in a while. Don't speak all the time, but we met. Yes.
How do you communicate out of curiosity? You guys text each other, or you email, or go through staff?
Well, we go through staff, but we also text. I try not to bother him unless I really got something good or important to say.
Well, all right.
Like wishing him well on the last launch, things of that nature. And
You wished him well on that one?
I feel, yeah.
Judge, it's good to see you again. Thanks for making the time for us.
Thank you, Jason.